down the tube to the uterus. Why? What if the egg were released, got in here, this is where it's going to get fertilized, is here, but didn't move any further? Anyone see a problem here? This happens. It's called a tubal pregnancy. It is fatal to the baby every time, and it's fatal to the mother half the time if you don't intervene surgically. So this is a medical emergency. An egg doesn't move down the oviduct, so I'm sure you'll agree that whatever the mechanism is, to get this egg down the oviduct to the uterus, I mean, it's key. Forget about life without it. No mammals, certainly no humans. Now, I'll show you what's going to get that egg down the oviduct. Let's look at the wall of the oviduct. The wall is lined with columnar cells. These are cells here, very tall. And if you look at the top, looks like little hairs, only these are so much smaller than a human hair. These hairs are so tiny you need an electron microscope to see one of them. Now, this is in a light microscope, and you say, well, I can see them, but you're actually seeing clumps. You're really not seeing individuals. These are really tiny hairs. And unlike the hairs of our head, not only are they tiny, but they move. They have like a whip movement. They come back like this, and they go forward, and they come back, and they go forward. And so they're constantly moving that way. And that's what's going to move the egg down the oviduct. Now, I want you to think about this. Think like an engineer. You've got all these little whips working for you, several trillion lining the oviduct. How would you suggest they do their little movement? One way is you sort of like fire the pistol and they all just start whipping to their own little drummer, right? That'd be something like this. Well, that wouldn't move the egg. You might work up a little foam, but you're not going to move the egg that way. Another possible approach is like window wipers in a car. You know, all together now, left, right, left, right. Now that's not going to move the egg. The egg's going to go frontwards, backwards. It turns out there is only one motion known that can move the egg down the oviduct. And this is so incredible that I'm going to have to collect $10 from each of you before I'll explain how this works. Now, it's called a metachronal rhythm, the only rhythm that can move the egg. And here's a little illustration of it right here. And guess what? It's the wave. From the bowl stadiums, do they get the wave going? Do they do that around here? It takes a lot of coordination to get a whole crowd doing the wave just perfectly. Well, all these trillions of cilia are doing a perfect collective wave, think in 3 dimensions in a tube going down the oviduct, and if they did anything else, it'd be the end of life right there. I've tried to think, you know, how would I approach this if I were an evolutionist? I'd look at this and say, an incredible stroke of dumb luck to come up with this. But I look at it and I think, oh my goodness, our Creator is so marvelous what He's done. Well, this is the whole map of what we're going to talk about, basically right here. This is about a week's work here. From the time the egg's released until it implants in the uterine wall is about a week. Let's start right at the beginning, an egg released in the oviduct. This is not human, it's mouse, but it is very similar to the way it would look in a human. The egg is a huge cell. Look how big this cell is. These little blue dots out here, they're your more normal size cell. This is a big cell. These cells are body type cells. They have a double set of chromosomes, 46 chromosomes. 23 from mom, 23 from dad. You're familiar with that, aren't you? You get half of them from mom, half from dad. But when you make a germ cell, like an egg cell or a sperm cell, you have to have the number of chromosomes. Because if you didn't, every time fertilization occurred, it would double the number of chromosomes again. I mean, figure it out. 64 doublings, you'd have chromosomes going out to the moon or nearest planet or something. So you have to have the chromosomes so that when they get together, you're back up to the full count. So this egg is going to go through the procedure. It's already begun it. All those years it was sitting in the uterus, it's been really given a lot of thought to this, but it hasn't completed it. It got into the first stage of what we call meiosis. Meiosis is where you double the DNA once, which is standard. Before you divide, you double the DNA, but you divide twice. So if you double once and divide twice, you're down to half the number. And it's been thinking about this since the baby was born, and now at the time of ovulation it's beginning to kind of move ahead. These cells that accumulate around the egg here are interesting. Do I have to tell you what they're called? The cells that accumulate around the egg. So help me. We just give it a Latin name, cumulus oophorus, but the cells that... I mean, I hate to break all this news to you because, you know, you had a lot of respect for people like me until I explain it to you. Here's the egg. These are actually the chromosomes in this egg. This was a very fortuitous plane of section because not only did we hit the egg, and it could have been anywhere in the oviduct, but we hit the chromosomes, and we hit them edge on. If you're up here close, you can actually see the spindle. So this is going through its first division, and it'll divide again yet. These are the cumulus cells out here. It turns out they're necessary. The cumulus cells secrete a sticky material. I just call it goop, for lack of a better word. And the cilia get their grip on this sticky material made by the cumulus. Experimentally, we've taken like rabbit eggs, stripped the cumulus cells off, introduced them into the oviduct. They don't go anywhere. When the cilia start beating, they just sit there and spin. You need the cumulus and the products it secretes. The other thing that's interesting you can see here, besides the chromosomes and the cumulus cells, see this little clear zone around here? You got it. It's called the clear zone. Only in Latin that would be zona pellucida. And this clear zone is the eggshell. Humans have an eggshell too. Only it's not a mineral shell like in a hen's egg. It's more like a gel. And it's not just there for looks. It plays an important role. And the role it plays is just going to blow your mind when you hear about it. I'll tell you in a bit. Well, back to our drawing or our map. 12 to 24 hours after the egg has been released into the oviduct, that period of time, 12 to 24 hours, is when the egg can be fertilized. The sperm have worked their way up to this region. One has to assume that half of them have taken the wrong oviduct.